So a while back, I made a video about how churches need to be talking about poverty in our country, especially if these are congregations, churches that profess to follow Jesus Christ, because speaking to poverty and homelessness was such a big part of his ministry. And we're living through a time where the disparity between the rich and the poor is becoming absolutely monumental. And it is becoming so much more difficult for people to maintain a basic standard of living based off of what we get as an income nowadays. We have more people falling into traps of poverty that keep them stuck as either the working poor or falling into homelessness. And we are especially seeing this in the Burlington area here in Vermont. Shared how congregations who are dealing with these issues are seeing more people who are falling into homelessness, how we're seeing more people fall into despair, and how it is frustrating that only a few congregations seem to even be talking about homelessness, poverty, and the struggle that so many Americans are having nowadays. So during the pandemic, Vermont had a program that worked with motels to create more temporary housing for people who were homeless and to get them off the street and get a roof over their head. And this was very beneficial. Those of us who are in housing advocacy have a saying, housing first. You can't really start building your life back up if you're always worrying about where you're going to be sleeping next or if you're going to have a roof over your head. And over the years, that program has been phasing out, and we've been seeing groups of people who have been losing the security and do not have housing security coming back onto the streets. Along with that and the already rising homeless population, we see homelessness here in the Burlington area and other places in Vermont entering into a new phase of crisis. And I think that it needs to be said and made pretty clear that the area churches here in the Burlington area support our homeless community. We do not want to see them kicked off our property. We do not want to see them driven out of town. We want to assist them as best as we can to find stability in their life and to get back on their feet. But there is a narrative out there that frames the homeless community as villains who are here to destroy public safety and security in our community. And that is not to say that there isn't a public safety aspect to this crisis. We are seeing a rise in gang violence. We are seeing a rise in drug usage in the area. And we are seeing that there are more and more people who are on the streets feeling like they are less secure. We need to understand that a lot of this insecurity, the gangs, the drugs, they are targeting the homeless population. Where you find communities that are struggling with hopelessness, desperation, and fear, you find you also have vulnerable people. And there are always people who try to prey on the vulnerable. Unfortunately, we are seeing a narrative here in Vermont, and it's being backed by money, that the reason we are having a public safety problem is because of these groups of people who have honestly always been a part of our community. We have always had a responsibility to help them. But we haven't been doing a good enough job, and unfortunately we haven't been seeing enough assistance from the state level, but we also haven't been seeing enough assistance from the community level. When you have a crisis of this magnitude, everybody needs to help out if we want to be able to make an impact. And this is the reason why I say it's not enough for only a few of us, a few churches or a few communities or a few businesses or a few politicians to be focusing on this issue of poverty. Everybody needs to be doing something if we want to be able to push back against the level of desperation that people are struggling with nowadays. For those of us who are Christian, we need to remember good old Matthew 25. I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. Those of you who look after the least of my children, look after me. We are not just called to implement top-down compassion within the world. Compassion needs to come from all places within our communities. And unfortunately, we have a real drive in our state and in our nation to push back against compassion. And I think that we are seeing on the streets what that looks like when a community abandons those tenets of love and neighborliness that a state like Vermont honestly prides itself on. I hope that love prevails in our little Green Mountain state.